One law in the 1990s changed everything about how people in Denmark shop for groceries, and it shows how good intentions can sometimes end in bad results. That Danish grocery stores kinda suck. And today we're gonna talk about why.
Yeah, so let's think about it. Denmark obviously should be a place where supermarkets are good. I mean, for one thing, it's one of the most livable places in the world. We kind of expect nice things in Denmark. On top of it, Denmark's an agricultural powerhouse. I mean, it's got the most land under cultivation in the entire EU. Nearly 2/3 of Denmark is for agriculture. It has a history of being an agricultural leader. I mean, this is where the mechanization of things like dairy handling and pork production really came into form in the 1800s, and it still is a world leader today. It's also a leader in fishing, especially for a country of this size, with its own major fishing industry. And on top of it, it's a logistics powerhouse. I mean, think of the names like Maersk and DSV, the location at the crossroads between Scandinavia and continental Europe. I mean, all of these are reasons why Danish supermarkets should be, if not awesome, at least pretty good. But they kind of aren't.
Exactly. So if Denmark is nailing everything up to the point of getting the products to the grocery store, why is the experience for those shopping in that grocery store so bad? Danes pay a higher price, have fewer selection, have diminished quality, have smaller grocery stores, and they're usually understaffed, which leads to a whole bunch of other problems like things not being as clean, waiting longer to check out, and sometimes getting unfriendly service in the stores.
So we tease at the beginning that this is the result of one law, so it's time to talk about that law. It's the Planlov, or Planning Act of 1997. And this law was written in response to a fear about the Americanization of retail stores. In truth, in the mid-90s, there was a growth in big box retailers in the outskirts of cities, and there was a fear that this could lead to the degradation of the consumer experience or city centers themselves. So they wrote a law that had three objectives. Number one, they wanted to make sure there was a diversity of shopping opportunities. Number two, they wanted to make sure that these stores were accessible by many different modes of transportation, not just the car, but also by public transit or walking or by bike. And third, they wanted to make sure that stores were a reasonable distance from consumers. They didn't want people having to travel kilometers and kilometers just to go shopping. So what the law did is it capped the maximum size of a retail store, like a grocery store, at 3,500 square meters. And on top of it, it ensured that decisions on this went to regional planning authorities, not just ones in the municipality or the communa. So that way there was a way to avoid competition between towns where, say, one communa might choose to relax the planning rules or have exemptions to it to invite a big box retailer into there. This ended up being one of the most restrictive laws in all of Europe.
Yes, so when it comes to the size of Danish grocery stores, it's because of the Planlov, as Mike described, that took place in 1997. That law basically said that stores had to be 3,500 square meters or smaller. 20 years later, in 2017, they looked at the law again and decided to relax things a little bit and increase that size to 5,000 square meters. However, Denmark still has no hyperstores, no big stores that you may see in other places across Europe. That means that they're 10,000 square meters to 45,000 square meters in size. And you may think that stores like Bilka and Foodtex would defy that, but what they actually do is kind of get around this. They still have 5,000 square meter sections for groceries, but they have some other areas of the store that are reserved for other clothing or retail items that can be sold, home goods that may be sold in the store itself. So that's how they get around the Planlov, even though the grocery section is still only 5,000 square meters like all other Danish grocery stores.
So these smaller stores hit the consumers primarily on price. The Danish Finance Ministry has estimated that Danes pay an extra roughly 2% in food prices because of the smaller stores. On top of it, independent studies have shown that Danes pay roughly 10% more than peer countries as a result of the Planlov, which leads to an extra spend of roughly 2,000 to 3,000 krona per year for each Danish family. So on top of the issues with price, this restriction on the size of the stores really eliminates any ability for an economy of scale. It also crowds out the market. I mean, you have two companies that control 2/3 of the market. Three companies control 3/4 of the market, meaning there's not a lot of competition in this space. And on top of it, because you have this lack of competition, there's actually been a change in the productivity growth in the retail sector. A study showed that before the law, there was roughly a 1.5% annual productivity growth that happened. These are improvements that businesses make that give them better profitability and usually have some savings that go on to consumers. Since the law was passed, that productivity growth has actually turned negative.
And the consumer is paying for it.
Absolutely.
And one way that Danish consumers pay for that is with fewer selections in grocery stores. GfK, which is a European market research firm, did a study of 10 EU countries and showed that Denmark on average has 60% less options than the other countries that were in this study. Germany, for example, has 80% more options available when they're shopping in grocery stores. So this means for every 10 products on a shelf in Denmark, you've got 18 products on the shelf in Germany. Not too long ago, TV Toe did a report on this and spoke to a consumer expert from the Research Institute of Scandinavia. So this study found three main things. One, that Danes seem to shop and prefer shopping in discount supermarkets. So they're more likely to make choices based on price than quality. A second thing that they noticed is that Danes say that they want more options, but typically the Danish shopper does not actually buy the extra items when they are available in the stores. So these stores take fewer marketing dollars to spend promoting them, and they don't often give them a chance in the stores. And the third thing is that Danes prefer to walk to the grocery store or ride their bike. So for that reason, you have smaller stores in a smaller congested area, many stores that are of less quality or size than other European peers. So all of these things do make sense when you look at the Danish consumer, but when you look at the business end, it also makes sense. These are discount stores, so they're trying to squeeze every last kroner out of their customers. They're not necessarily going to mess around by trying new products or offering more things to the people that are shopping there. They also don't have the floor space to try new things, and they're basically just going to sell you the staples, the essentials, and the things that you're used to. Even though we do know that Danes take a little bit of time to warm up to new things and sometimes even new people, they're not often given the chance to try these new products by the discount grocers.
So another unexpected consequence of the Planalone is that it leads to understaffing of these grocery stores. It's easy to blame the high wages in Denmark or the powerful labor unions, but obviously this isn't unique to Denmark, or especially in the Nordic countries as well. What ends up happening is because you lack these economies of scale, you have many small stores that have to be staffed. And so each individual person is hugely important. I mean, how often are we standing in a queue and suddenly have to hear about a casa because the queue is getting itself well into the produce section and somebody else has to come up front to help out? But it makes sense. I mean, if you could only staff a store with, say, 2 people or 3 people, each person that has to go up front is one fewer person that's in the back being able to stock the shelves again or clean up that mess that's over in the jelly aisle or whatever else needs to happen in the normal running of a grocery store.
In fact, it's funny, if you are on Instagram and maybe you've seen this post, it went a little bit viral. There was a girl named Anna who actually went into some grocery stores and basically set everything up and placed all the items in order in a nice, neat way. In most other countries, this is how you find items on the shelves. They're actually organized nicely and neatly and even taken out of the cardboard box that they're shipped in. In Denmark, it's very common to just see the same cardboard shipping boxes thrown onto a shelf. And this girl, Anna, actually went viral because she went and organized everything very nicely. You should expect that in a grocery store. Some people in the comments of this Instagram post were saying that they worked for various stores and that their managers would tell them, oh, leave it messy, it makes it look cheaper. That to me just seems like an excuse that maybe you just don't have the labor to actually keep your store neat, take items out of the cardboard box they were shipped in. Restocking in a lot of Danish grocery stores is simply dropping a pallet of products on the ground and letting people rifle through it to buy to find the product that they want to buy. And to me, that's just not good business. For some reason, that's acceptable in Denmark, but other countries find ways to present products in a much neater, nicer way. You wouldn't shop in a clothing store that did that. If you go into a boutique, you're going to see that things are neatly hung on hangers. Why do you accept that when you go and buy the food that you're going to feed your family?
And on top of just the general aesthetic appearance of things in the stores, this does have a negative impact on product quality. And we're not just talking about the 10-year-old meat that was found in the back that's been allowed to be released for sale again. What ends up happening is, again, you're missing on economies of scale. It's very difficult from a logistics and supply standpoint to be able to constantly turn over products that are sitting out there. And so many of us who live in Denmark have seen rotten fruit and other things that are sitting on the shelves that aren't all that great. And obviously there's some positive things where they have, say, the red tag items that you can buy on discount because it's reaching expiry. But sometimes the quality of stuff that's sitting on the shelves for a normal price just don't seem that nice as well.
Yeah, so there's a challenge in space and logistics when it comes to shipping things to all of these smaller stores and storing them there before they get put out on the shelf. That makes it really difficult to guarantee quality and freshness in a market like Denmark where that's really important to the consumer. Now, some people will write this off as just Denmark's preference for organic products, but that doesn't mean that they should spoil or that they should be on a shelf in a condition that isn't really suitable for human consumption. Denmark is hardly the only country that has a preference for organic products and fresh products. Many countries around the world do this and sell organic products without such a challenge.
So what's in store for the future? And I have to say, the grocery stores have been in the news quite a bit these first few months of 2023. For one, the German retailer Aldi has announced that they are exiting from the Danish market, saying that it's very difficult for them to remain profitable and compete with all the challenges that are placed by things, including the planning law. Additionally, the Coop brands have decided to consolidate a number of their brands from 8 to 3, meaning that iconic brands such as Irma are going to be going away. And it may surprise you that Coop had 8 brands. I mean, they had all kinds of brands like Irma and Kvickly and Coop and Facta and Coop 365 and Superbrussen. So by consolidating them, they're trying to get a little bit more of an economy of scale by having repetitive shops that are going in under a common brand. But when you look at it, it's kind of interesting as you look at the fact that there aren't that many companies that are competing in Denmark. I mean, you have 31% under the Salling Group and 31% under the Coop Group. And even in third place, you have 13% of the market under the Rema Group. That is the Rema 1000 brand.
Yep, and the closure of Irma in particular was a bit of hard-hitting news to the people that like to shop there. I think part of the reason is because it was a store that was well known for not necessarily having better quality products, but of always being clean and well-staffed, and they did have a pretty good selection when it came down to it. So a lot of people were upset and even protested, which looked a bit ridiculous. I mean, talk about first world problems, but I understand the sentiment here. It was actually a good place to shop. So no change to the Planalone is actually even in talks or on the books. I don't think the new government is focused on this. They're busy taking away public holidays. But when it does come down to it in the future, it looks like there's not going to be any hypermarkets coming anytime soon. The Planalone stands, and it's very easy for new shops to open as long as they're under 5,000 square meters. But it's almost impossible for some of these bigger competitors around Europe that you may see in other countries like Carrefour, Tesco, to come into the Danish market. And that will probably stand. More competition and efficiency could bring down prices during this time of inflation, which would be nice, but right now it looks like there's just going to be less competitors in the market, and I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. But if you do want to see a good thing that Denmark did to fight back and do better, powerful things for consumers and labor in Denmark, you'll have to watch this video about what Denmark did to McDonald's in the 1980s. It has a much happier ending.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear your opinion as well. Join in the comments. What do you think is more important? Having more shops that are closer to you, or possibly using economies of scale to get cheaper prices and more selection? Tell us no.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Bye.